Am I on?
You got it now.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Tynan, we know you well. We appreciate you applying very much. Thank you for doing that. Do you have any opening comments you'd like to make?
No opening comments at this time. For the sake of saving time, I'd like to answer more questions.
Wise move, given that you know that we're almost getting ready to end the day.
I do. I'm always last because of my last name.
Yeah, one day I might just flip the schedule. We'll see.
That would be nice. I would like to be done at 9:30.
All right. And as I've told some of the other applicants that we interviewed just a few short weeks ago, we may not have as many questions for you as some of those with whom we have less knowledge, but please don't take offense to that.
All right. Thank you for the warning.
All right. Let's start with Mr. Ballantyne.
All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, actually.
Good afternoon.
So since your last time, which was for a circuit position, and this is for a county position, how have you changed your preparations, what you've considered in terms of, materials to look at, et cetera?
Materials to look at. My understanding is that this position where Judge Neighborhouse was in a family covering family circuit position. So I wanted to make sure that I was familiar with what kind of docket I may be walking into. As you know, both from my application and from my experience interviewing before, I'm very familiar with family law and criminal law. So it was a bit different this time because the last time it was a civil position. So I wanted to make sure that I knew what type of position I would be walking into if potentially picked.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Dowdy.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You've practiced a lot in county court over the years, haven't you?
I have.
Do you feel that you could get up and running right away if you were appointed?
Yes, I do. I started out as a prosecutor in misdemeanors, and by the time I left, I was in circuit court. But after I left the state attorney's office in Orlando, when I started at the public defender's office, I was put back in misdemeanor court or handling misdemeanors in county court for a period of time because there simply wasn't any felony positions open. And as of this month, I've been out in private practice 10 years with Johnson & Montas. And in that time period, I have routinely handled misdemeanors.
Great, thank you.
As well as uncontested divorces and contested divorces in circuit.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Delgado.
Good afternoon, Ms. Tynan.
Hi, good afternoon.
So 2 questions for you. The first, what are your views on punctuality with respect to court appearances, hearings, etc.? And do you hold the same views as applied to pro se litigants and attorneys?
Well, attorneys, it depends on what type of courtroom we're talking about. If it's a family courtroom with definitive hearing times, it's extremely important for both attorneys and pro se litigants to be on time because those are set hearings that are specifically spaced out in accordance to how long that particular hearing should be. In county court, on the criminal side, it's a bit very different actually, where there may be 50 people that are set all at the same time. So I believe on the criminal end, I would be a little bit lax for both pro se litigants and attorneys. Pro se litigants, many of them are there and are dependent on rides or buses or getting there by bicycle. So I come into that courtroom with that being an understanding that many of them that are in that particular courtroom come with a financial hardship that can't simply get in a car and drive to be there specifically at 8 a.m. With attorneys, if it's a private attorney, likewise very difficult because attorneys like myself are routinely in 7, 8 courtrooms at the same exact time. So I would give a little bit of lax if it was a criminal courtroom as opposed to a family courtroom where the efficiency of the courtroom really depends on people being on time and accurately estimating how much time they need for a particular hearing.
Thank you. And my second question is, you're in a unique position where you may be stepping into a county court bench position during a pandemic. And given the backlog of cases, have you given any thought to what strategies you might use to triage the backlog of cases as we eventually emerge from this pandemic?
Well, there may be a system that has to be put in place where there are certain types of hearings that have to be fast tracked in a way, for lack of a better term, similar to what in on the criminal end. As an example, there are certain cases that are essentially fast tracked. In this particular county, we have early resolution where there are certain types of cases that are essentially tagged for what appears to be routinely something that won't go to trial. And so if I could effectively assess certain types of cases that can be resolved in that fashion, then that's probably how I would handle that. I wouldn't want to double book because I think that's a disservice to the public as well as the attorneys.
Fair enough. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
Hey, good afternoon, Ms. Tynan. How are you?
Yeah. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Obviously, the majority of the work on the county bench is criminal. If you were to get a seat, what things, are there any new processes or things, systems that you would like to try to do to try to improve the efficiency and make things kind of all around better?
Are we referring to the criminal end? If we're on the
Yes,
criminal?
ma'am, criminal.
Yes, I think there are some courtrooms that do what we call paper dockets. And I think that is a very effective way to to make things move quickly and efficiently. And I think there needs to be a system where that is used more often. Not all courtrooms do that. And it does become problematic scheduling wise when there's 50 attorneys trying to do the same thing. And if we could do the same job in less amount of time, I think that's efficient for both the state and the defense, as well as, the people whose cases are pending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Fallon?
Good afternoon, Ms. Tynan.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I just want to follow up first. Are you fostering any children? I'm always interested to know that whenever you come before us.
I am not fostering any children at this time. I did terminate our contract in November, and my children asked for us to be a family of 5 again. So I obliged by that request after having fostered 20 kids for 5 years. So in the interim, I have made the transition where I did want to be involved in some way with the foster system, even though I was not myself fostering. So I have found other ways to volunteer where I could contribute to the cause and not necessarily have them in my home. That way I could essentially kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your service. I
welcome.
have a follow-up question about how you have grown personally in this time with this pandemic and being able to handle your caseload and also your family as well.
It has definitely been a learning experience, to say the least. My kids are 10 to 14, and I praise the Lord that they are self-sufficient and can do a lot of this schooling on their own with minimal assistance from me. And it has made me grow professionally in prioritizing what needs to be prioritized. Just the surrealness of this entire situation is astounding to make people realize, and as well as myself, and myself included, what is important and how to prioritize. I think it's important for me to have sat down and said, okay, this is how I'm going to treat these cases. I don't want these people to feel ignored, while at the same time valuing the extra time that I now have with my children, which quite frankly, I haven't really had in several years, between balancing my workload, my trial load, the foster kids, volunteer work, homework, extracurricular activities. It's been a lot. So not that I'm glad that there's a world pandemic, but it's given me cause to slow down a bit and concentrate not only on prioritizing my caseload and what needs to be resolved quickly and what can wait, but also, the time with my children.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Pickett.
Hello.
Hi. Afternoon.
So tell us about your experience and your interview at the governor's office. I know that you've done that several times. Anything unique about the last interview? And if so, how have you used that experience to prepare for this time, should you make the short list?
The experience last time, and compared to the other times under the different administration, is I would point that it is extremely thorough, extremely substantive, and it's a good experience in the sense that it is a long conversation, a long interview, as opposed to what essentially feels like a meet and greet. And so I appreciate that aspect of the interview. And so I if chosen, I plan on just being myself and answering the questions and as best as I can. And they're either going to agree that I have what they want, as what the governor wants as the correct judicial philosophy, or they're not. So I can just do my best and go from there.
Thank you.
Ms. Snedeker.
Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good afternoon.
I heard you, and I've read your application and heard what you've had to say today and also back in February. And I know that you have experience both in the county court and in circuit court. And you've applied for a circuit position and now the county position. Based on your experience as an attorney, and now that you're applying for this county position, do you have a preference, circuit versus county?
I really don't. I don't feel like one seat is better than the other. I think either way, it's providing a service, and a service that the community needs. And I really have an interest in what the county position does as well, whether it's criminal or family. So I think I could be of good service either way.
And that was going to be my next question. Do you think you're better suited for one over the other?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't. Thank you.
Mr. Bear.
Yes, Ms. Tynan, my question is, if you're provided this appointment, are there any practices that you've seen in county courts which you would want to make sure that you don't implement yourself?
Just going back to the mandatory appearance of all attorneys for docket sounding, that's something I would at least try to do a paper docket and see if it works, and whether it results in unnecessary continuances that is not efficient. And but that's one of the main things that I think could help have a courtroom work efficiently. There have been a couple of courtrooms as well where once you get on the trial docket, you're on standby. And so there have been a couple of instances in certain courtrooms where even if you're on standby, you're called to the courtroom to provide status per se of where you are in the trial resolution or resolving that particular case. That isn't something that I definitely would not do because it is time consuming and unnecessary. And frankly, if it was going to resolve, it would have resolved already. And so I think there are good aspirations for doing that, being hopeful that cases are resolving, and the more times that you call attorneys and defendants into the courtroom, maybe one more shot will resolve it. In reality, for the practicing attorney, we all know that that's not how it works. So I would definitely not do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Tynan, we have a few more minutes if you'd like to say anything else to the commission before we begin deliberations.
Well, I would thank you once again for having me and being so kind and letting me answer your questions. And I am hopeful that I will make the short list again. As you know, as I said, I've had experience in both family law and criminal law. I'm a litigator and have litigated many cases throughout my 18 years of practicing. And for the last 10, I've been practicing family as well. All of the civil cases on my application are all family cases that I've litigated, whether it be dissolutions or child support cases, modifications for alimony or child support, paternity, time sharing. So I'm very familiar with both family and criminal. But lastly, I would like to say that if I were to look at the list of people, and they're all good litigators, I know all of them, I would say that in looking at the list that I am the only person on the list that is extremely comfortable in both aspects of the law, whether it be criminal or family. Aside from that, I would point out that it is my position that it's very important for the person who's chosen to be fully invested, not only in the position itself in the courtroom, but also in the community at large. And so my familiarity with everybody that's on the list would indicate that, again, I'm the only person who's fully invested in the community in the sense of outside of the courtroom. And so I would hope that the commission would take that into consideration as well. And with that, I say I thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Ms. Tynan, for your time. I'd like to thank the members of the commission and Ms. Cutts at our firm for assisting so well with the technical aspects of the meeting today. For the commissioners, it's coming up on 3 o'clock right now. We're going to convene in our deliberative session at 3:15. That's 3:15. Please be on time. And hearing no objection, I call to a close the public session of the 18th Circuit Judicial Nominating Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.